Hey everyone, welcome to Watch Complications. I'm Brian. I am supercharged about this particular video. Exciting topic for me, particularly on the watchmaking side. That is chiming watches and a preview of the ChristopherWard C1 Bel Canto. In the description below, you'll find links to the post associated with this video where you'll find the textual write-up and pictures that you'll see featured throughout the video. You'll also find links to my Instagram and joining as a member timeline if you want to skip around the video, all that kind of good stuff. I love chiming watches. I have a couple myself. I'll feature them in the post and here in the video a little bit. But we want to get into chiming watches, a little bit about the complications, that technical side. I will preview the C1 Bel Canto from ChristopherWard with pictures that they've provided me. And then in November, I will publish then a full review of the watch because I have one incoming, right? I mean, this is a watch I just couldn't resist. And yeah, you should know up front, I am a ChristopherWard enthusiast. I like the brand. They interact with their followers in a meaningful way. They don't overcharge for what they make, and what they make are excellent, finished, and designed mechanical watches. When it comes to horology and watch channels and stuff, there are a lot of, we'll call them more higher end sort of emphasis channels. They'll easily dismiss stuff like this, but I think what the C1 Bel Canto is basically a message to people both in the industry from the making perspective and the collector enthusiast perspective that you're missed out. And you're missing out if you don't pay attention, and now it's time to really pay attention to a brand that's doing things different. Brief wrist check before we get into that. I am wearing my Tudor black base ceramic master chronometer on a Barton Elite gray and black strap. I am working on a post and video at the same time as this, actually, on wearing lower cost straps on higher cost watches. I plan to drive some people nuts with that in this video. I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be fun too. And other fun stuff coming up on the watchmaking and the watch review side of things. So stay tuned, subscribe, hit the button, click the bell if you want updates. Stick around. We do fun stuff here at Watch Complications. What I want to do here is provide an overview of chiming complications, discuss their technical design, show some examples of my own chiming watches, and then get into some brief details about the C1 Bel Canto and the Sonnerie au passage, and some comparisons to examples that already exist of this particular complication, past and present. Let's do it. If you're looking for the specifications for the Bel Canto, I do provide them in the post. Link is in the description below to my website if you want just the numbers. I'm going to focus a little bit more on that in the next video when I do the full review. Here, that stuff will still come up in the conversation, like wearability. The fact that it's 41 millimeter, 13 millimeter height, a certain amount of weight, materials, price, that's going to come up through this discussion, but if you want all those specifics in a list, check out the post. So chiming watches. When an enthusiast thinks of a watch with sound, likely the first thing that comes to mind is a repeater, a watch that will chime the hour, the quarters, or the minutes on demand with a slider or a pusher. And I suppose people tend to navigate toward the pinnacle of watchmaking out of a desire to hear time. As CW was dropping teasers in the lead up to the release of the Bel Canto, social communities were sort of flooded with commentary about how might be a repeater, maybe a minute repeater. But that was always an unlikely candidate, especially at this point in the company's evolution. Though starting off as a watch micro brand, if you want to call it that, and internet retailer, CW's made great strides in that they already have their own in-house caliber, SH21. I've reviewed that before. I've shown several watches that I have that with that particular movement, 5-day, 120-hour power reserve. It's an amazing, cool construction. And a number of in-house modules. They've built a lot of different modules for ETA and Silhouette movements. So they've got experience on the technical side with movement making, module making. And the creation of JJ01 specifically, which was their jumping hour movement, sort of laid the technical underpinnings for creating the FS01, which is featured in the Bel Canto. Think of it this way. If a mechanism can be built to jump on the hour, that is, you have a single minute hand going around it when it hits 12, the hour flips. If you can do that, you can use that same power to take a hammer and strike a gong on the hour. Generally, chiming watches fall into two functional categories, repeaters and sonnerie, and that means repeater on-demand time with a slider or pusher, usually on the side of the case, and Sonnerie, where it's going to chime automatically as the time passes. So when it hits a particular hour, it will chime the hour automatically or chime the quarters automatically, so on and so forth. When it comes to repeaters, again, chime on demand. There are really four, I call them normal. None of this stuff is normal, to be honest. But there are four normal variations on that. We have the hour repeater, which chimes the hour. Think city bell clock. You have the quarter repeater, which chimes the hour and quarters, where 1, 2, or 3 chimes on the quarter means 15, 30, or 45 minutes. You have things like 5-minute repeaters, which chimes the hour, the quarter, and then the 5-minute intervals, given an hour. So you're talking about 0 through 55. And then you have minute repeater, chimes the hour, quarters, and then the minutes. On demand, again, with a slider pusher. When it comes to Sonnerie, again, automatic chiming at whatever intervals. Sonnerie en passage, you have a chime on the hour. It doesn't mean it has to be just a single, strike of the hammer. It could be multiple strikes, or maybe a particular song or something like that, a portion of some theme that strikes on the hour, but that's the idea. It lets you know that an hour is passing in some way. Bel canto is at that first level of complexity, if you want to call it that, and that kind of goes up several levels. So a petite sonnerie will chime the hour only on the hour, and then will chime the quarters, throughout that hour. And a grand sonnerie will chime the hour both on the hour and the quarters every quarter. And almost all sonneries, at least that I've seen, will have a pusher where you can turn the functionality on or off, where you will hear the chime automatically or you won't. You can just read the time normally. As I mentioned earlier, I have a few repeaters lying about. One's a practice movement, just so I could essentially learn the complication from a mechanical standpoint, face to face, staring into the abyss of things that are hard to wrap your mind around. I have a doctorate, and I cannot hardly wrap my mind around servicing my quarter repeater. It's insane, the level of tech. And the fact is, mine are 100 years old, and they are built like tanks, and they work. And people were designing this without CNC machines. It's just otherworldly how this stuff gets designed and works. Modern day, it's got all that, the technical precision of lasers and machining, and it's super accurate, and they cost a fortune though. But it's hard to wrap your mind around how this stuff actually functions, taking apart. So you got to have a practice movement if you're ever going to get into this. But even broken down, missing parts movements cost hundreds or thousands of dollars on something like eBay. But I have a practice movement, I have a working quarter repeater, and I have a working minute repeater as well. But I've got to do some maintenance on it. The main spring and stem and stuff needs some work. So I've got some work to do on that. But I do have a couple. I'm showing them throughout this. But repeaters or grand or petite sonneries, these things just don't fall off trucks, okay? And when a watch brand produces that, you can expect a 5, 6, or 7-figure price tag. This stuff is not cheap. I'll be showing you comparisons. Just look at the new Omega Speedmaster chrono chime. It introduced a few days before the Bel canto. The price tag is 450,000 pounds. Strom, which CW works with on some particular watches that they've had in their past, things like the Concept, the Apex in their background. Now with the Bel canto, they did the platine, the dial work essentially for the Bel canto. They have a repeater, a minute repeater. It also has resonance on it. They've had a few variations, but it's around $400,000 in grade 5 titanium, which the Bel canto has. Now keep in mind that like the Omega or the Strom, they have other complications, like the Omega having the chronograph and the Strom having resonance. That raises the price tag. They also often use precious metals, but we'll come back to that in a little bit. With that broader context in mind, a watch that strikes once on the hour with its own complexities is much more in the wheelhouse of a brand like Christopherward to enter the chiming watch market. Even though an hour striking watch might be the simplest chiming watch, comparatively speaking, the work to create a good chiming watch of any kind is extremely demanding. Primary factors include design, power, materials, wearability, and of course sound. But CW excels at something else, making watches affordable and thus accessible to watch enthusiasts. And that's one of the reasons I really like them. So the hour striking complication, passing chime, if you want to call it that, the sonnerie au passage. How common is a watch that strikes on the hour? Well, like most chiming watches, not very common. So I want to provide some examples. I did some looking around. Some of these I've come across before, but I want to provide context on price, striking variety, materials, design. My opinion is that the comparison I want to show establishes just how important the Bel Canto is, not only for CW, but for watchmaking more broadly. Up first is the Chopard Strike 1. They've had this watch in complication for a while, about 2006. Fairly okay design. Rose gold, 40 millimeters, got a good size. Sapphire gong, $63,000. The best thing about this watch is the fact it's a sapphire gong. That's going to create, I think, a little bit of a higher pitch. I don't know what key it's in, but that's going to be a unique sound that could resonate well. And the size is also very good, 40 millimeter. Most watches at Chime are larger. I'm actually kind of surprised that the watches I have, my pocket watches, they're really well done Swiss movements. Just based on size. You can look at size and be like, how quality of a watchmaker was this? What complication did they fit in what space? That's like one of the primary things that at least I look at. Rose gold is a soft metal, and so you're going to get a little bit less resonance and volume. And 63K is too far gone for most people, let's be honest. The Tech Strike one, again, this is a 2009 model. Complication that they introduced started in 2006, but has a better case given its titanium, which helps with sound wearability, but even an older model demands a steep price. It's over $23,000. And the design is terrible, like really awful. Then there's the Ulysses Nadan. The UN has released several variations of the Hour Striker, but the fully skeletonized look is for only a fraction of enthusiasts. 45 millimeter diameter. I mean, that's more on par with what you'll typically see with some of this stuff. It's large due to the sheer number of parts, and you know it's bad when they say price on demand. I mean, for anything. One thing a little bit different and adding to the complexity is this is a sonnerie au passage that chimes not just on the hour, but also on the half hour, adding to the complexity a little bit with a variety of other complications it's paired with in different models. Here it's pictured with a tourbillon. So depending on the specific model, you can find them priced in the mid 10s of thousands. So like 40, 50K up to over 100K, depending on what specific model. Precious metals, in my estimation, are not the best choice for a minimal chime watch. Let's say if you have a single ding on the hour, could be a little bit different if you have a quarter or minute repeater, something more sophisticated than that. But when it comes to the price tag on this one, the diameter, they're just not accessible, wearable, respectively. So no. Then we come a little closer to home. The Meistersinger Bel Ora. CW helped build and design the module on top of the Sellita SW200 base. So the price is in a respectable range. You got to give it that. But it's not as good a deal as the CW Bel Canto. Why? Although I'm okay with 43 millimeter watches, it's still kind of big. It's at my limit personally, and maybe some other people. But stainless steel exhibition back is going to kill the sound. And I won't hold back. It's ugly. Like really ugly. Then for fun, I put a couple others just for some context of other examples of this particular complication I could find. Breguet had the 8978, which has a slightly more complex complication. 2 strikes for the hour, repeated 3 times. As I mentioned earlier, you can add some complexity to the complication. So it's not just a single chime on the hour, but has multiples or something. It's more sophisticated just to give it more emphasis that, hey, the hour has just passed. It's a 2010 ladies watch. Has a nice balanced look, actually. It's a beautiful ladies watch, but it's over 100K. And not the sort of watch most people reading this are probably after. Then we have the GP, Gerard Perregaux, 1945. Sonnerie au passage uses precious metals, has other complications tacked onto it like the tourbillon or retrograde date, which increases price. Tiny watch. This thing has a 110-hour power reserve. That's like insane. But price and design are problematic. So other instantiations of this complication exist out there. And as we think back to the ones I've shown you as examples, you know, the Chopard looks good for the most part, though the rose gold crown price presents significant issues for me. The Meistersinger brings a price to a realistic level. However, the most interesting details have a plain design or hidden behind a bad dial in a large case. Enter the Bel Canto, a sonnerie au passage that to me looks like M, B, and F meets H, Moser, meets Arm and Strom, and make no mistake, this is haute horology for the masses in watch enthusiast terms. Bel canto is Italian for beautiful singing. It's associated with a form of opera. And make no mistake, a single note sung really well can be really powerful. I mean, it's kind of the point of opera, right? And prolonged notes particularly, they can be powerful. This watch is meant to let the wearer know that another hour has passed in the pleasing key of D, and look really close. The sound pointer is a beak of a songbird comprised of the bridges and gong. Very, very clever design. I mean, kudos, seriously. Now, with the Christopher Ward logo and word mark being a never-ending point of contention, let me throw this up there. Where is it? Do you see it? They've done something much more powerful here and forgone any logo on the dial. It only exists on the crown at 2 o'clock, used to set the time. The pusher at 4 o'clock turns the chime feature on or off, as indicated with a red tip on the face pointing to a wave on or flat line off. The crown and pusher balance very well in my opinion. I really like the pusher design. Back to the lack of a logo. I interpret this as a strong statement to the industry. This is a CW and the design DNA says enough. Imagine Rolex coming out with something like this with their crown on it. Seriously, it would cost a fortune, you wouldn't be able to find one, and then you'd remember that they only design within a certain box, so it would never happen anyway. I'm not saying Rolex is a bad watch, they're a great watch, I have a couple. What I am saying is, and emphasizing, is CW is a different kind of company that's pushing the boundary, thinking outside of the box in terms of design, what can be done with common Swiss movements, and this is a serious level up for the brand. So yeah, I bought one. It'll arrive soon. I'll provide a full review, including lots of pictures. Since I'm sort of limited on that right now, this is again just the preview, teaser, given the context. But leading into that next review, I want to summarize the main features that make me think this is one of the best watches by a brand in a long time. Chiming complication, specifically the Sonnerie passage. I actually like that it only chimes once on the hour. If you think about it, let's say I'm going through a day, I'm teaching classes, I'm doing whatever. I like one strike on the hours lets me know, oh, okay, another hour's passed. If it was chiming the hour count on every hour on the wrist, that could get a little bit annoying. Whereas like with a repeater, it's on demand. You can kind of know when you want to know. Of course, you can turn this on and off, but that single chime on the hour, that's going to be just a beautiful mechanically based reminder that another hour is gone. I think that simplicity is just as powerful. Wearability, at least just sort of that brief overview, 41 millimeter diameter, 13 millimeter height, 48 millimeter lug to lug, and it's titanium, so it's lightweight. Like that's in the wheelhouse of everything else, sort of in a, maybe my collection, average collection maybe, but maybe around 53 grams, I think is what is on the specs. Like that's gonna be an extremely wearable watch, hands down. And that material, that's kind of big point number 3 features. But grade 5 titanium with a solid case back, that sound is going to resonate. That's a hard metal, really hard metal. And dense walls means resonance and volume, so it's just called physics. The sound. Getting a hammer and gong combo right is an extremely hard thing to do, an amazing feat. Took them near 100 attempts, a little bit less than that. But this isn't stuff that you look up in a book and learn. It's all proprietary. So yeah, that's a big thing, the sound itself. Price of 3 to 4K depending on the currency. I mean, wow. No matter what you think about Christopher Ward or other brands that are working on this kind of stuff, there's just no comparison if you factor in the design, because yeah, the Bel Aura is in that same price range, but it's just ugly and you know. But CW develops watches and they have always only applied a 3 times markup on whatever the cost of the watch is. No other brands are doing it that way, really, where it's like that's constant, no matter what type of watch, no matter how complex, what movements are being used, 3 times markup, and that's that. I think we can expect to see all of the R&D and stuff that went into this watch and the design and the work trickle down into whether it's other colors or other models. This is not the last time we're seeing this technology go into a watch for the brand. And then just brilliant design. I like the Christopher Ward C1 case. I've done video work on, you can go back and look at the channel, on C1 watches, C1 case. It's probably one of my favorite. It's their dress style case. They've reimagined it here. It's a new C1 design overall, and it looks beautiful. the brushing, the polishing and stuff they've used on it. They've also not gone full skeleton on this. That would be a temptation. And the concept, the C60 concept, was full skeleton, and you saw the Ulysses Nadan also in this category was full skeleton. They've not done that here, and I think that's an important move. They've just raised the most interesting aspects of the mechanism to the surface, just those, and then done them really well. Final thoughts. I have really no more words to say here except that I had an image in my mind when I knew this type of watch was coming down the line. When I first saw it, I was actually speechless, if you want to say that. I mean, that's kind of cliche. My jaw hit the floor. You can say whatever you want. It's like not what I expected at all. I expected something probably more along the lines of the Meistersinger, something that was a regular old dial. It had some interesting characteristics about it. I did not expect this sophisticated horology design look. I did not expect there would be no logo. I did not expect it would be a solid case back. I thought a lot of these design characters would be what people might really think was going to happen, and none of that ended up true. It's like I almost didn't know what I was looking at first, and then you look at it and it's like, okay, this is Christopher Ward, and they've got a new level, a new direction, and the fact that it's still accessible to the people they really build these watches for is just it can't not be overstated how I think important this watch is for the brand and for horology going forward and expectations. Like, why would you go pay $500,000 for something if you're getting close to that or something related to that? And I think this is not the last thing we're going to see in this vein. I look forward to it. I like barriers being broken down. I like people trying things new and being like, you know what, I can do that too, but you know what, I'm gonna outdo you on this thing. We can do it better and for lower cost. I don't know. That's a good thing. So there's the context of chiming watches, specifically the passing chime complication. More on this in the future. It'll probably take me several weeks. Get it, wear it, and then I'll have a full review and lots of pictures of my own stuff. In the meantime, there will be a few other videos posted on some other topics, watchmaking, low-cost straps, that kind of fun stuff. Let's watch complications. Subscribe, please. Check out Instagram and my site. There's a blog post for this. All the info is in the description below. I'm out.